If you joined me last week, you learned a little bit about how I grew up and the challenges that I faced being Black. I also shared some memes and some commonalities that happen between people in the Black community. This week, I have a very special guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hi, Justine. It's great to be here. I am Gilbert Trevino, a member of the Hispanic community. I'm also a classmate and friend, lifelong friend of Miss Justine Wade here. And I'm very honored that you chose me to be on your podcast today.
Well, thank you, Gilbert, for coming on out. I wanted to bring you out just because we are really good friends here, and you are someone who is fully Hispanic. So I just wanted to talk about and discuss maybe some misconceptions, some stereotypes, maybe things that you thought before you became really good friends with someone who is Black, or before you kind of assimilated into a Black community, just to kind of give a viewpoint of how you first saw me or saw my community before you actually got to know me.
Let's see. So I, grew up in the city's west side, which is predominantly Hispanic. While I grew up in a Hispanic neighborhood, I did often go to school where it was predominantly mixed of Hispanic and Black. So that's kind of where my first interaction started. Spending 8 hours a day with kids who looked like me and kids who didn't look like me was kind of that first opening introduction. But I didn't see them any different at that time. It wasn't until I would get home or we would do things that it was more like, that's when I would start getting into the conversation with,
Why did you laugh right there?
I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay, because when you said, until I got home, I'll cut it, and then we can...
So, yeah, we would get home, and, I would, mind you, my grandmother worked as a lunch lady at the elementary, so it's like, I would say something like, oh, this person, so-and-so, we played together at the playground, and, that's when the misconceptions would start coming out as like, oh, you don't want to hang around so-and-so too often, like they're no good or they're up to no good. So just things like that. It wasn't until I started paying more attention to things like that I noticed, okay, so there is some differences that at the time I didn't know couldn't be much more, what's the word? Untrue, I guess. Yeah, untrue. Because growing up, a lot of my little friends were Black. And I how do I say this? I was nice with everybody, but I tended to be nicer with people who I felt like were in situations like mine. And so it kind of felt like those situations were Black kids.
Okay. So socioeconomically, you felt like you related more to people, Black people. I mean, overall, we're people of color, but to Black kids over maybe white kids.
Yes.
Or other races.
Yes.
Do you feel like growing up, you were raised more by who?
Grandparents.
Grandparents. So do you feel like, and this is a very kind of honest out there question, do you feel like at a point, or even maybe now, that maybe your grandparents, maybe not racist, but had some bias towards Black people?
Yes, I will say that. I will say that in the context is yes, because they grew up in a very much different time than we did. And I'm sure you're looking at me now. I'm a very Caucasian-looking Hispanic. I'm very white complected. So even though I am Hispanic, I could pass for white. So it was the kind of that mindset that, we don't really look the part of Hispanic, so we can
pass for white.
We can pass for white.
Got it. So do you think that whenever your grandparents were maybe telling you not to play with kids or not to interact as much with certain kids, do you think it was because of their skin tone, or maybe because they thought they were like bad children, or possibly both?
I think it was a mixture of both. I think they grew up in a time where, of course, where they they grew up in a time where segregation was very big. Of course, Texas is Texas, and they were always those kind of people that they followed. They did what they were told, and they followed the news. So, like, if the news said, "Oh, you know, protests led by Dr. King," they were in that mindset that, oh, the white reporter said that Dr. King and his protesters are violent.
Got it.
Compared to the contrary, when they were just who they said.
Got it. So, I guess when did you? Because you mentioned that you didn't see the other kids much different from you. I mean, color-wise, like, you noticed that, but as a kid, I mean, I talked about this last episode, you don't really notice that you're different, or that, like, skin tone is what makes people different or what makes people think certain things. So at what age or what specific thing can you remember maybe the first time that you were like, oh, like, this is about them being black. This is a problem because they're black?
I think it was more towards the middle school years.
Okay.
More like, when we're at that age, we're like, okay, we're starting to understand things, we're starting to pick up on some things, but at the same time, we're also starting to, we're at that age where we can kind of, like, what's the word? I'm trying to think, like, understand somebody? Or,
okay.
Like, no, what is it? Develop your own thought of somebody.
Okay.
When you're able to be like, oh, like, okay, like, Justine, I'm picking up this, Justine likes the color red.
Yeah.
When you're starting to develop that profile of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, that's when I started to realize, well, they're not bad. They're not bad kids. They may be in a bad situation.
Yes.
But at the same time, who in life isn't dealt a bad hand?
Yeah. Do you think, or were there anything specific that maybe your grandparents or just family, friends, people who were not black, do you think that there was stuff that they were telling you, or did they tell you things to make you, like, not want to be around black people or be afraid of them, or, like, stereotypes? What was being put into your head to make you think, well, maybe black people aren't who I should be hanging around?
Growing up in a, how do I say this? I guess, like, I wouldn't say in a traditional household, because my family was far from traditional. But growing up in a full-blown Hispanic family, like to this day, there is not a single aunt or uncle, cousin that is married to a black person. It's all Hispanic. Like, my cousin's, husband is Hispanic. My cousin's wife is Hispanic. My aunt and uncles are all Hispanic. That right there, I wasn't ever specifically told about that, but that kind of set the precedent. Like, you only date Hispanic, or you only talk to someone who's Hispanic. Or the misconceptions that I've learned now is, it was always, the black people are mean, so don't talk to black people in public. And it's like, sometimes sometimes I do grocery shopping on my own, and sometimes somebody may need help, and sometimes it's a black person that may be like, hey, like, but they're not mean. Like, black people are actually really some of the nicest people out there.
Yeah.
Coming from somebody who was told all their life that, oh, you stay away from black people because they're mean, or they're loud, or they'll steal from you. Like,
yeah. So besides me, because we've already established that we've been friends for a while, we met or actually started becoming great friends or really good friends in the later part of middle school, going into high school. So did you have any other friends that were really good friends that you had gotten close to prior to me being, like, your first black friend?
To be honest, I will say this: like, you are actually, like, the first true black friend I've ever had. Yes, I associated myself with black people in elementary school and in middle school, leading up to high school, but a lot of those kids I lost contact with, and but I wasn't as close with them as I would with you, But also it was because that mindset. It was like, I never really took friends home at a young age, so it wasn't like, oh, like, I'm gonna go play with so and so. Like the how do I, like, it's probably, I don't know how this is gonna really go into the podcast, but like a lot of my friends, Hispanic and black, lived in the Northside Manors, and even though I didn't live in Northside Manor, it was kind of just like, we had a family friend that my mom and grandma would often go visit, but I was never allowed to go with them.
Oh, okay, because black people, or like there were some there,
or like there was, or like it was just the thought like, oh, Gilbert's gonna pick up something pick up on something that he shouldn't.
Yeah.
Or Gilbert's gonna pick up something he shouldn't.
Got it. Do you think that for us, because the type of school that we went to in our environment, it was very like, they said project-based learning, so we were solely like, y'all are gonna figure it out on your own. We're gonna put you on groups, and y'all are gonna have to kind of teach yourself this stuff and learn this stuff. So we would spend a lot of time together because there wasn't that many people in our school and in our classes. So we would end up in groups together, end up working on projects or homework or whatever together. So that's kind of how our relationship started. Of like, oh, we're just doing schoolwork, so we're kind of forced to hang out, and then eventually turned into like, oh, you're a genuine person and I enjoy your friendship. Yeah. So do you think, I mean, honestly, I guess when we first started having to be involved with each other, did you feel like, yeah, I've been around black people, I have some friends like here and there at school, but like now I'm forced to be with this girl kind of often or around this type of person? Did it make you feel any type of way?
No, I mean, I had already been associated with black people, as I said before, but I think what was different this go around is I was getting to know you.
Yeah.
You know, we became acquainted, we started spending time, so that was something different, because I think I would have never experienced that, and then...
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, I guess maybe your first time, because we would go to each other's houses. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if you came to my house first or I went to your house first.
I think I went to your house first.
And that, I think that's how it went. My family, my parents are just like, be friends with who you want to be friends with, like who you like, whatever. I mean, that's kind of how the community is. Like, we know that people find us misunderstood or have these misconceptions about us, but we're not ugly people. So my parents are just like, whatever, bring whoever you want over here, like that's your friend, it doesn't matter what color they are, they can be purple, cool, bring them over. So you coming to my house, it wasn't ever an issue. But I guess the first time that I went to your house, or maybe the first time you brought me up to your grandparents of like, make specifically like, this is my black friend, did they react anyway? Was it a weird conversation? Did you feel weird like in those moments?
I think they were more surprised than I was. They were like, oh, he does have a black friend, or like, oh, like, you know.
Yeah.
But for them, I think I think for them that changed how they saw black people, because you ended up turning out to be one of their favorite persons, and you know they were more like, oh, and to this day they still ask like, oh, how is Justine? You know, how's she been, or what she's up to? And so I think in that moment it was not more of like a stunned and like shocked reaction. It was more of just like, oh, like, you know, like we're opening up to this.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like he's gonna have friends, he's gonna bring people over, and of course I was the only one who had a printer at home, so everybody would be like, okay, well, let's be friends. You'd be for my printer and ink, and then be like, okay, don't talk to me. But no, like we you know, there was a group of us that would always go to my house, you know, to do things, or vice versa. We'd go to your house. And to be honest, it was either mine or your house that was the place to go. And
even at that, I feel like I was the only black one. I mean, if we look back on it, not that we didn't have friends that were black, but I mean, in those friends groups, or even in those, like at school, mm-hmm. they were Hispanic people.
Yeah.
I think that me and you growing up, our family situation, okay, who we were raised by was not exactly the same, but the same boat of like, we weren't the richest people out there. Our families were both very dysfunctional and very crazy. But our friendship also helped us like escape from that and get away from those things. So I think that's what, like you said, we were actually getting to know one another. You were actually getting to know what it was like to be around black people, be in the black community. I mean,
a black household,
yeah. Like once we actually became friends, and it was less of like, oh, I'm just coming over to do homework or coming over to study, and it was, oh, we're just friends coming over to an event. I think that I tried to, like, for me, because you were Hispanic, or because like we had friends that were Hispanic, I wanted people to see that like we're kind of like y'all too. Like, we're the same. I mean, obviously we're all not exactly the same, but we're not people to be afraid of or people to be scared of or terrified. Like, it was just kind of like the same things y'all do with your family, we do the same thing over here. And I wanted you to feel as welcomed as I wanted to feel with your family. Now, I have had experiences with people or with friends who have been Hispanic or Latino, and their families rejected me or rejected the friendship that I had solely because I was Black. I can recall a time, even with us, I think I always felt welcomed over there. Again, having been through an experience where a family made me feel as unwelcome because I was Black. Your grandparents were always nice to me. I can't think of a situation where they weren't. I mean, they would pick me up and take me home, like, with you, like, to my house after school and stuff, or if I needed anything, like, they were there for me. But I can remember there was a specific time where it made a significant difference to me and made me see, like, okay, they don't just see me as Gilbert's friend. Or it's not like, oh, we just have to accept her because she's Gilbert's friend. Like, they genuinely liked me as a person and accepted me as a person. As I can recall it, we got picked up from school one day. We were going over to your house, and it was your grandfather who picked us up and one of your other family members in the front seat. And I can't remember exactly if we were all having a conversation or if they were having one and we were having one in the back seat or something. But somewhere in between getting picked up from school and getting to your house, the family member, he said the N-word, the derogatory statement, the hard N for what people call Black people, what outside races called Black people. And I was instantly offended and shocked because, again, I had been around some of your family and they knew me. And I mean, we had been friends at that point for a while. And I just didn't think that, like, that would have happened. And so instantly your grandfather, like, got upset and stuck up for me, and he was like, that's not right, you don't say that, you know. And I don't think that he was saying it because I was in the car. It was just kind of like he really felt like that was wrong.
It was a true, genuine reaction.
Yes, like, that's not okay. And then we ended up getting to your house, and they told your grandmother, and she, like, was livid. And that, in those moments, it was like, wow, like, these people actually genuinely care about me, where I thought maybe that wouldn't have happened because I was Black. And again, people have their own ideas. They genuinely, like, oh no, like, I like this girl, like, it doesn't matter what color she is, like, that's not right, and you know that that's not right, so why would you say that around her? Why would you say it at all? Like, it's not okay. How did you feel, I guess, on your end, being in that situation? And me being your friend, like, it happening and it being your family member, how did you feel?
I think that was one of those, like, it was complete shock. And especially, like you said, like, you know, the friendship's it wasn't new at the time. You know, you'd definitely been around the house. You like, you know, her grandparents were both acquainted with, they both knew who you were. Mm-hmm. They knew of our friendship. So I think it was just as a shock to me as it was to, I mean, I can never compare the shocks we both feel just because you grew up different.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't. You know, I've never been called a slur before. I mean, yes, Hispanics have slurs for us, but it's not common for people to say them. To say slurs to us. So I think in that moment it was shocked because I was like, did I just hear this?
Yes.
And so I kind of remember giving my grandfather the look through the rearview mirror, like, you know, like, did that just come out of his mouth? Yeah. And then, of course, that's when he proceeded to jump in. But I think in terms of our friendship, I don't think I've ever felt more, not just in terms of, like, as a Hispanic, but as a human being, I've never felt more disappointed as a person. I see the person's heart. I see the person's, you know, the memories. You know, I see, like, the friendship, you know, this and that. You know, I could care if you were purple. Like, that would not make me any less of your friend. Yeah. So in that moment, as much as I was disappointed with family, I was more disappointed that this has become acceptable. Mm-hmm. You know, this has become so normal, and when it shouldn't be. Yeah. You know, just like me as Hispanic, I wouldn't want, you know, I wouldn't want somebody to call me out of my name And, so in that moment, I truly felt, cause I felt disappointed, and I was proud of my grandparents for sticking up for you for that fact. But it just was so upsetting that has become such a normal thing. I mean, even to this day, considering that happened more than 5 years ago, and there's still instances where you go somewhere and you hear people saying the N-word. Mm-hmm. That I feel like that's such an common thing that occurs that shouldn't be so common.
Yes. I'm glad we kind of transitioned to that because I did want to talk about that. We went to the same school, middle school and high school. So we know that we were around Hispanics and Black people. And it was like, don't get me wrong, there were the Hispanic people who were very cool with everyone and it didn't matter what you looked like. And then there were the ones who were very ugly and negative, specifically towards Black people. Mm-hmm. And that slur was thrown around, I mean, in the hallways and the classrooms and whatever. Like, it was very much out there. It was heard. Now, did you ever feel like it was okay to say?
No.
In any context? Because there's the version with the A at the end, and there's the version with the ER. And, well, let me take a step back. For me, I personally don't... There's a difference. Some people feel like there's a difference when you say it with an A. And there's some people who feel like there's only a difference when you say it with an ER. For me, both of them are not okay. Now, do Black people in our community use it? Yes. We use it with the A. And it's more of just like, I wouldn't take a term of endearment, but for me, it's like, we are Black people. It is a word that was used against us in hatred and ugliness. So we took it back and said, okay, well, we're going to use it like how you say my friend, my pal, my whatever, but only towards other people who are Black. Because we've experienced this. We have this history of like this negativity that was like happening towards us, this discrimination that was happening towards us. So when I feel like other races use it, they don't see that history. They just say, well, it's a word y'all use and y'all just say it. But it's just like any other slur. You know what I mean? There's, like you said, there's some that there are negative slurs or slurs in general that are used, that can be used for Hispanics or Mexicans, but those aren't just thrown out there every day. They're not just, oh, well, they're cool. Y'all say it, so I say it too. Like, no. I feel like this word, amongst anybody, white people, any race, it's like people are just, well, you say it so we can say it. It's okay to say it because y'all say it, but like, it's not okay. And that's truly how I feel. I feel like it's not okay. Now, I'm not in control, right? There's the freedom of speech. Really, anyone can say whatever they want, and it is what it is, but that doesn't make it right. So when we would go to school and I would hear that stuff, or I would hear people saying that stuff, it would kind of like upset me, but then at a certain point, there was only so much I can do. So I started making it like known to my friends. Not that I had friends who thought that it was just super okay to say that weren't Black, but I would like make it known, like, hey, I know y'all might say this when I'm not around. Y'all might say it because it's in a song or whatever, but don't say it around me because it makes me uncomfortable. I understand the history behind it. I understand how much it's hurt my people when used the way that it was used, the reason it was made. So for those reasons, don't say it around me. It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me feel like you're disrespecting me. And you might say, well, you're my friend, so it's okay. But it's not okay because it still makes me upset. Again, I know what it's caused for my people. You'll never understand that. And then I've had people who were like Hispanic who say, well, we were discriminated against too. But no one, and I truly feel like this, no one to the capacity that Black people have in America have been discriminated. Like, I feel like we are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to that. Not that it's a competition of who's getting more hatred, but we definitely had more than any other race or ethnicity. And that word was heavily used towards my people. So, with that being said, on your part, when we're not around each other, or maybe with other groups, do you feel like it's okay for people to say it? Or do you stick up for people that you know that are black? Or what's your stance, I guess, on the N-word?
I think, that was a very great point you made. That word has so much historical significance behind it. And when it's used by people of color, it's not used in the derogatory meaning. It's used as a way to signify this is a word that was used against us, as you mentioned, but here's how we've overcome it, and this is how we've become people. From black person to black person, if you want to say that word, so be it. That's not my business.
Yeah.
Because that's your troubles. That's everything you've been through.
Yes.
I'm like, but for you to allow somebody who's not a color, somebody whose background is different than all of us, they're coming up from the time the country was founded to now.
Yeah.
Like, me, I was disappointed as a human. How could you let somebody whose great great grandparents could have possibly owned your great great grandparents?
Yeah.
And yet you think that's fine? Like that's not.
Yeah, because it really does make it makes you look at people differently, especially when you hear people saying it, and then when you, like me, if I'm telling them like this is making me uncomfortable, or like I'm not okay with this, like, and then they get defensive. Or they start trying to, like, tell me why I'm wrong, that makes me look at you different. Because instead of you just accepting what I'm saying as a person and valuing what I'm saying as a person, you think that my opinion's objective, and it's not. If I feel that this is ugly, then you should understand I feel like that. Even if you feel different. You can say, I understand where you're coming from, and I think different, and that's just what it is. But that's not how it was. You know what I mean? And I feel like you said it just because people say it doesn't make it right. Just because you think it's right doesn't make it right. Or, if you value me as a person, or you saying, oh, like, I don't have a problem with black people. If the black community is telling you, stop saying this. This is making us uncomfortable. This is you pretty much saying what they were saying to us back then in history. And then people who aren't black saying, well, no, it's just a word. But it's not just a word. Because if it was just a word, you would stop saying it. If there was no meaning behind it, you would just stop saying it. But there is, and people don't care.
Or it's almost like that. It's almost like people putting their hand up in the fist. Like, we all know what that means. That's a symbol of black power.
Yeah.
And so when somebody who's not of color does that, we all know what they're trying to say. Like, we get what you're trying to say, that you're trying to say black power.
Yeah.
Like, just like we all know what somebody's trying to say, when they throw their arm up and, they're trying to say white power. Like, we all know what that means. And I think the significance behind those I guess, what do you call them?
Gestures?
Yes, gestures. It's the same thing with that N-word. We all know what it means. And I think some people might just be too immature or childish to fully understand that. So they say it thinking, oh, it's a joke, hee hee ha ha, but it's like, it's childish of you to say that word, considering you're at an age where they should have taught you how that word was used.
Well, I think those were some great points that you made, Gilbert. I want to thank you for taking the time out to come and speak with us today. It turned into a very heavy conversation towards the end, but I think those are the conversations that need to happen. Those are things that need to happen to enact change. If there's someone that you would like to see on the episode, or a topic that you would like for us to discuss, please comment it down below, or direct it. If there is someone that you would like to see on the show, or a topic you would like for me to discuss, please comment it down below, or send us a direct message on Instagram to @JustLikeMePodcast. See you next week.